Today I am platinuming The Wild at Heart, an open world exploration puzzle game that is clearly inspired by Pikmin, and I use the word inspired pretty loosely. PSN Profiles claims that this should take 10 hours, but there's a few comments that seriously question this, saying it should be about 12 to 15. Well, there's only one way to find out. So let's get into it, but before I do, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. New platinum videos out every Monday and Thursday. Despite the vibrant art style, don't be fooled, this is kind of a sad story, and the first thing we do is literally run away from home. That's actually quite a sad opening. The adventure begins for successfully running away from home. Hope it cheers up a bit, really. After being introduced to Greycoat, I am given my first Spriteling, the Twigling. I'm also given the Shiny Stone and introduced to Scrap Heap. Alright, Gustbuster Plus. I think there's a trophy related to fully upgrading this, so we're off to a start. Scrap Heap can give some really useful tips via the Shiny Stone, and I'll need to keep this in mind for later. After finding the stash box, it's time to put my 25 years of football skills to the test. Alright, we're going for an achievement. There we go! Goal for kicking an item directly into the stash box. 2 down! I also get the first Heartroot resin of the game. I will need all 32 to get all the upgrades and therefore all the trophies. As you would expect, the first few puzzles are quite easy. I'm also introduced to the nighttime enemies that I'll want to avoid at all costs as I head to the Grove. Okay, guess we're running. Oh my god, what is that? What is that? Jesus. Think of the Grove as the main hub of this game, and it's here where I meet the gang for the first time, including this crazy cat lady, and I will need to rescue all her lost cats. Welcome to the Deep Woods for reaching the Grove, the home of the Green Shields. The story dictates that I need to rescue the rest of the Green Shields gang, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. After a bit of exploring, I discovered the first of many cats. I also get the journal called Book, as well as the first lost journal entry, and I make my first camp. Small the merrier for building your first camp. Once that's done, as I'm doing my first rescue mission, I'm introduced to the second type of Spriteling in the form of Emberlings. With the Emberlings' help, I rescue the twins who love gossip, and that's an important detail for later. As I mentioned earlier, the art in this game is absolutely beautiful, and I take a moment to enjoy the serene surroundings that the game has to offer. Alright, nature bath for taking a moment of thoughtful meditation by the waterfall in the Heartlands. All you need to do is stare at this waterfall for a few seconds and the trophy's yours. Once that's done, I eventually complete the second rescue mission as I rescue Paper Planes, and this means I can start purchasing maps off of him. I also make a start on Scrap Heap's Grove Trove, and I also rebuild Crow's Nest's shop, and I create my first item. Alright, I made my first recipe, the kettle bomb, and I get Trainee Tinkerer for crafting the first item. After a very close shave trying to get the Grove Trove going, I do reunite with Kirby, the second playable character in this game. Kirby's great because she gives us access to tons of new areas, because A, she can fit through logs, and B, she has her Green Lantern, Warden's Way. With our second party member acquired, it's time to pull a rather easy all-nighter by staying near a campfire. If you're near a light source during the nighttime, the Nether will never attack you. There we go. Bit of waiting, but all-nighter achieved for staying up through the night until daybreak outside the Grove. This is probably the easiest time to do it. Once that's done, I grab this shell that lets me upgrade my Spriteling capacity by trading in these blue orbs. And after that, I explore a rather dark and dingy cave as the puzzles start becoming more elaborate because we have 2 party members. I rescue the final member of the Green Shields called Toothpicks. This also unlocks hunts, and Toothpicks can give us lore through the shiny stone about all the areas of the game, and I do need to do this, but I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And we get a fractured order after all that for calling all the wayward Green Shields to the Grove and covering the details of their missions, which they were absolutely terrible at, it's got to be said. With all the Green Shields rescued, it's time for part 2 of this game, and that's where I need to start finding the 3 MacGuffin crystals, artifacts. But before I do that, I need to pick up this water wheel so I can rebuild the mill. The mill is super important for trophy related upgrades by trading in scrap and that heartroot resin that I was talking about earlier. I also meet Rubbish to trade in some, well, rubbish. Bargain bin. Make a trade with Rubbish. It's time to grab the first artifact and properly explore the mandatory Arctic level with the mandatory ice sprite, the Shiverlings. Since we are in the mandatory ice level, it also means that some of our spritelings can get frozen, which is important for this trophy. There we go, Freezy Pops. That took a bit longer than I would have liked. Get 5 or more spritelings frozen in ice simultaneously. After some incredibly interesting puzzles, including a new cloning mechanic and, amazingly, even the Emberlings, I get my first MacGuffin. From the mandatory Arctic level to the mandatory beach level, where I meet this absolute unit of an otter. At least I think it's an otter. It's here that we are introduced to the barblings. These purple things are super useful and spiky, and probably the best combat ones in the game. After breaking crystals and solving puzzles with my new friends, it's time for the first big boy fight of the game, and unsurprisingly my first death because I was getting a bit too comfortable, I've got to be honest. After eventually waking up and actually focusing on the game, I do get done what I need to get done, and I feed said absolute unit some clams to make him bath something up. No, I don't know why, don't ask. I take a quick break from proceedings and grab some more trophies by crafting some meals and some tonics. Alright, I have done all the meals and that gets me Nutrition Whiz for crafting every type of meal. And Mixmaster for crafting every type of tonic. With that done, that means I can now sell absolutely everything for scrap. I don't really need materials anymore, and this will make getting the upgrades so much easier. So I take the opportunity to max out my bag slot since I have the scrap and the resin. Alright, and I've got now the Sparks Joy for purchasing every bag slot upgrade. We are really getting into the thick of things now. And once that's done, I go back to the mandatory beach level and get a miscellaneous trophy by vacuuming the barblings onto a crystal to break it without throwing anything. There we go. Look, come on, no hands. Break a crystal with barblings without throwing them. And after all that, I finally get the second MacGuffin and I make my way to the not so mandatory blight infected area. Now that I've unlocked all the outside areas on the world map, it's time to use the shiny stone and get some trophies. I spam the twins and get all the gossip. Hot goss! For listening to all the juicy gossip that the twins have to dish. There is some real nonsense in there, but it's funny. And I spam scrap heap and get all the hints and tips. Okay, and FAQ Finder for hearing all the scrap heaps, tips and tricks. There's some good lore in there, lots of things I already knew, but it's a trophy, so I'm gonna get it. After meeting another absolute unit in the form of this Yeti and fixing his flute, I am finally introduced to these final and best spritelings, the Lunarlings, and that completes the collection. Herd is the word for befriending the 5 main spriteling types. It's a really nice variety, actually, among the spritelings. It's got to be said. Makes for some really interesting gameplay. This MacGuffin quest is by far the longest and requires good spriteling management and the ability to not get lost or stressed or irritated. As part of that strategy, I decided to take a break to breathe and mix things up a bit, and I buy the final map. Alright, Pathfinder for getting every map in the game. Actually one of the easier trophies, it's gotta be said. After breezing through the rest of the exploration, including the only part of the entire story you have to do in the nighttime and risk the wrath of the Nether, I complete the massive medallion from Legends of the Hidden Temple and grab the third and final MacGuffin. Another break in the gameplay means, you guessed it, more upgrades. Home is where the hearth is. This is for purchasing every Spriteling cap upgrade. Oh boy, we're nearly there. And now that everything is in place, it's time to make it to the final area and the final boss fight of the game. The final passage. For opening the way to Umbral Athea using the power of the Green Shield artifacts. But before I do that, I do need to pick up the only missable collectible in the entire game. The fact there is only one missable collectible is really irritating, and I'm not entirely sure why that's the case. Anyway, it's time for the final boss, and honestly, it's just running around spamming square and hoping for the best. I make it a lot more difficult than it needs to be, but on the second attempt, I do eventually get there. Resealed and restored for defeating the Nether. It's quite a cute game, quite dark, but quite cute at the same time, it's gotta be said. With the story done and dusted, it's time for the post-game cleanup, starting with all the health upgrades. The totally full at heart gotten for purchasing all the health upgrades. Now the best thing about the post-game is that you can now fully explore the world and not worry about getting ganked by the Nether during the night. It's time to spam toothpicks and get all the lore about all the areas by visiting each one and asking her, well, what's this place? There we go, I missed one, but geography buff for learning about every area of the deep woods from toothpicks. With that done, it is time to start cleaning up the collectibles by picking up the rest of the unmissable Lost Journal pages. Page Master for finding all the Lost Journal pages missing from book. And after that, it's getting the rest of the treasures for the Grove Trove, and empowered Lunarlings make this very easy. Trove Trusty for completely filling out the Grove Trove and finding every last missing treasure. I also grabbed the last cat. And we got Catastrophe Averted for finding all the cats. Well, hope the crazy cat lady's pleased with that. And I use all the rewards from the collectibles to finish all the Gustbuster upgrades. Back off, man, I'm a scientist. I have purchased every Gutbuster upgrade. Then it's time to complete the rest of the hunts. This doesn't actually take that long, to be honest with you, since enemies respawn every 2 days. So what you can do is that you can literally sleep in the camp twice in like 20 seconds, and that usually guarantees that they respawn. All I've got left to do at this point is the mushrooms, the fey flies, and this big boy. This is the way for completing every beastie bounty from toothpicks. With all of that done, I get the 30-second heartroot resin, and that means I can finally get the last upgrade too. Hal Jordan who? Purchase every Warden's Way upgrade. That's a Green Lantern reference, which I was expecting much earlier, but whatever. We got one in the end. And I believe all the trophies, probably, for collecting every trophy in the world at heart. Good game. Really good game, but let's not beat around the bush. This is not just inspired by Pikmin, this pretty much is Pikmin, but with a slightly more indie feel to it. But it's on PS Plus, it's free, strongly recommend you check it out. Oh, and for the record, my final playtime was 9 hours and 47 minutes. So that answers that.